Hello everyone. Welcome to Knowlix, where your mind grows a little bigger every day. There's a belief that the moon is the cause of people going insane. Let's analyze whether this is true or not. The idea that the moon exerts a gravitational pull on the human body, creating cyclical changes in fluid-filled compartments such as intracellular fluid, extracellular fluid, and the contents of the intestines, has long been proposed as a cause of altered human behavior, including increased rates of violence and homicide. Throughout thousands of years of human history, people have held a strong belief that the moon can stir emotions and provoke bizarre or irrational actions. Terms such as lunatic and lunacy originate from the Latin word lunaticus, literally meaning affected by the moon. A survey in the United States found that about 40% of the general population and as many as 80% of mental health professionals believe that the full moon influences human behavior. The central question is whether these strange phenomena are genuinely linked to the lunar cycle or whether they simply reflect humanity's tendency to blame an inanimate celestial body for personal failings and societal problems. The precise origin of the belief that the moon drives people mad cannot be pinpointed with certainty, but it most likely emerged in ancient Greece. The ancient Greeks attributed mysterious neurological conditions, such as epilepsy, to the gods, because disorders of the brain were enigmatic at the time. Their cause was also assumed to be something equally mysterious, and the moon was an obvious candidate. For the Greeks, the moon represented a mystical entity and a bridge between the human world and the supernatural. As a result, mental illness became closely associated with lunar influence. Epilepsy, for instance, was regarded as a sacred disease, and the only known remedy was to perform rituals honoring the moon. This concept also gained traction in ancient Rome. In the 1st century CE, the naturalist Pliny the Elder argued that the full moon produced thick nighttime mists that abnormally moistened the brain, leading to epileptic seizures and erratic behavior. He reasoned that because the moon's gravity causes ocean tides, it must similarly affect humans, whose bodies are composed of 60 to 65% water, and whose brains are 85 to 95% water. The logic seemed compelling at the time. In medieval Europe, the belief evolved into the so-called lunar lunacy effect, or Transylvanian effect, according to which people were thought to transform into werewolves or vampires during the full moon. Fast forward to the 1970s, psychiatrist Arnold Lieber revived Pliny's hypothesis with the concept of the biological tide. He proposed that the moon's gravitational force induces periodic shifts in the body's fluid compartments, thereby altering behavior and elevating rates of violence and homicide. Lieber further suggested that the strength of the gravitational pull is directly proportional to the severity of violent acts. The stronger the gravitational influence, the more brutal the crime. Even today, many people continue to attribute erratic behaviors, sleepwalking, psychotic episodes, suicide, traffic accidents, violent assaults, and various other anomalies to the mysterious power of the full moon. So what does the scientific evidence actually show? By the late 1980s, at least 40 studies had examined the relationship between the moon and mental instability, and at least 20 studies had investigated links between lunar phases and human birth rates. All of these investigations reached the same conclusion: no statistically significant correlation exists between the lunar cycle and either human biology or behavior. Some observers point to the fact that the average menstrual cycle in women lasts approximately 28 days, roughly matching the lunar cycle. However, this alignment appears to be nothing more than coincidence. Similarly, claims that lunar gravity affects amniotic fluid and could trigger premature labor have been proposed. Yet detailed analysis reveals no supporting evidence. A few isolated statistics appear, at first glance, to support the full moon effect. For example, among 13.029 motorcycle fatalities recorded across the United States from 1975 to 2014, the death rate on full moon nights was 5.3% higher than on other nights. In 2007, police authorities in Brighton, England, publicly announced they would deploy extra officers during full moon periods, citing an expected rise in crime due to more erratic, irritable, and argumentative behavior. In October 2009, British politician David Treadinick sparked public debate by claiming that surgeons should avoid operating on full moon nights because blood clotting is impaired and patients face higher risks of fatal hemorrhage. The medical community responded with widespread amusement. Despite these anecdotes and official statements, the broader scientific community has been unable to find any convincing evidence linking lunar phases to human behavior. To understand why the hypothesis fails, it is necessary to examine the actual mechanics of the moon's orbit and gravitational influence. The moon and Earth exert gravitational forces on each other. Ocean tides are the most visible proof of the moon's pull on a planet 12.742 kilometers in diameter. The moon's gravity causes the oceans to bulge on both the near and far sides of Earth, producing high tides at those points and low tides elsewhere. Three key scientific arguments decisively refute the full moon effect. First, the gravitational force exerted by the moon on an individual human body is extraordinarily weak, far too small to produce any meaningful effect on brain function, let alone trigger extreme or bizarre behavior. The difference in a person's weight caused by the moon's gravity is smaller than the weight of a mosquito landing on one's shoulder. Second, lunar gravity affects only large, open bodies of water such as oceans. It has no measurable impact on small, enclosed volumes of fluid, including amniotic fluid or the fluid inside individual brain cells. The moon does not even influence most lakes, ponds, or the majority of river lengths, except at river mouths where they meet the sea. Certain smaller seas, such as the Mediterranean, Black Sea, Caspian Sea, and Caribbean, exhibit almost no tidal response to the moon. If these vast bodies of water are largely unaffected, the notion that tiny pockets of fluid inside the human body would respond is implausible. Third, the gravitational pull of the moon is essentially identical during both the full moon and the new moon. Lunar phases are determined solely by the relative positions of the moon, Earth, and Sun as seen from our perspective. They have no bearing on gravitational strength. Gravitational force changes only with alterations in mass, not with the illuminated portion of the moon visible from Earth. Why, then, do millions of people worldwide continue to believe that a celestial body located roughly 10 times the equatorial circumference of Earth can somehow interact with the human mind and compel irrational or violent actions? Ancient folklore and cultural legends tend to persist across generations simply because they have been believed for so long. Most individuals do not question ideas endorsed by respected figures, such as midwives, nurses, grandparents, or parents, especially when those ideas carry a spiritual or mystical aura. This phenomenon is known as cognitive bias. People tend to favor information that confirms their pre-existing beliefs while disregarding contradictory evidence. A midwife may vividly remember a busy delivery ward on a full moon night but forget the many full moon nights when the ward was quiet. Similarly, parents and elders may simply be repeating stories they themselves heard as children. This pattern is reinforced by a common psychological error called illusory correlation, the perception of a relationship between two variables when none actually exists. When people repeatedly notice events coinciding, they assume a causal link. For example, someone who eats a particular food before an exam and then performs well may credit the food with bringing luck, even though success resulted from preparation or chance. In the same way, any unusual event that happens to occur on a full moon night is remembered and reinforced, while identical events on other nights are forgotten. Over time, a non-existent connection becomes deeply rooted and is passed down through generations. Although the moon does not create werewolves or induce clinical insanity, one genuine effect has been documented: the full moon can disrupt sleep. A full moon night is approximately 12 times brighter than nights at the beginning or end of the lunar month. People tend to stay awake longer and sleep less during this period. A Swedish study involving 492 women and 360 men found that men went to bed about 20 minutes later and experienced slightly poorer sleep quality on full moon nights, while women's sleep remained largely unaffected. Even mild sleep deprivation can trigger hypomania, a state of unusual physical and emotional excitement, in individuals already prone to mood disorders. This can intensify into prolonged sleeplessness and heightened restlessness, potentially contributing to impulsive or erratic behavior. In conclusion, centuries of myth, anecdote, and cultural tradition have sustained the belief in a full moon effect on human behavior. Modern scientific research, however, consistently demonstrates that no causal relationship exists between lunar phases and mental instability, violence, birth rates, or most other physiological processes. The gravitational influence is negligible, and any observed statistical variations are better explained by psychological biases and the very real impact of brighter moonlight on sleep patterns. The moon remains a source of wonder and beauty, but it does not hold the power to drive humanity to madness. So, what is your opinion? Do you think the moon affects human psychology and physiology? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this article informative and interesting, please like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to stay updated with more science-based explanations. Thank you and see you in the next video.